I'd like to call to order the April 22nd, 2024 budget meeting. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Says introductions, but I mean, we all know everybody, correct?
We're good.
Hello?
We're good.
Lovely to see everybody. We are missing a few people, but I think we still are okay with numbers, yes? Okay, great. Can somebody make a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is that here? You want roll call? Okay. I move to approve the minutes from the February 26th, 2024 meeting. Sure. Okay, we'll both seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, that was fun. Eileen. I'm gonna turn it over to you now.
So tonight, just a quick reminder on where we are in the process. It is the second kind of preliminary budget meeting that we have. Our first official meeting will be the next one. So the next meeting on May 9th is the first official budget committee meeting. That one is where you will get the budget message from Superintendent Parker here, and then you will get the actual budget document. We'll go through kind of a summary of changes and priorities and investments in that document. We do then have two additional meetings scheduled. Both of them are held there, so May 16th and May 23rd, depending on how much time and deliberation we need as a budget committee. At the end of this, really what we're looking for is a budget that's approved by this committee that will go to the board for adoption. And the board adoption is June 10th. So,
good.
Madam Chair, when is the second? I didn't miss the second meeting.
The second meeting would be May 16th.
Thank you.
Those are if needed, correct? Or we definitely having the May 16th one?
definitely May 16th. The May 23rd is the one we,
Yeah, they'll depend on where we
it
are.
depends. Some years we use it, some years we don't. So, but most of the time, the first one is a definite, the second one is if needed. And so I'll do a brief update for the current year's financial update on where we are on our general fund cash flow. This really drives the starting point for the 24-25 budget. The ending fund balance this year is then our beginning fund balance that gets rolled into next year and our starting point. So just to kind of go over where we are this year on our cash flow for general fund, we are sitting at $15.8 million in our general fund projected fund balance for this year, or 19%. It is slightly down from where we were last year. In June 30th last year, we ended at 21%. So we are still using ending fund balance, just not as fast as what we thought we were going to. The next slide shows a little bit of the resources and expenditures. The resources is primarily where we're seeing the increase in fund balance. When we built the budget last year, we built it on a $9.9 billion state school fund. We were still actively in the legislative session. Once the legislative session ended, we ended with a $10.3 billion state school fund. So our state school fund resources jumped considerably after the budget was adopted last year. With the state school fund, we've also received a positive prior year ending fund balance. We've received an increase in our local statewide revenue, increasing the amount per ADM. Our teacher experience ratio went from a 0.21 to a 0.39. So these are all things that impact that state school fund formula. And then the last thing that impacted that formula this year is the increase in the ELP We've heard over and over this year that we've had an influx in ELD students and ELD needs this year. We are now seeing that on our state school fund estimates and additional resources for that. So then we have our beginning fund balance, which is the June 30th ending fund balance increase over what we had built into the budget. We have interest resources that are almost $1 million higher than budget. If we look at our LGIP rates, right now they're at 5.2%. This time last year, they were at 3.7. And the same time the year prior, it was at 0.75. So interest rates have significantly increased over the last 2 years, driving this, our interest revenue up. I don't see it continuing year over year, but whether it starts to go down next year and the year after, we're gonna be watching that and building in kind of a little bit of, in next year's budget, it will be probably still high, but conservative, assuming interest rates start dropping a little bit. Property taxes increase of 464,000. Common school fund increase of 105,000. And then we have two negative adjustments for resources, high cost disability and forest revenue. So high cost disability for us is a reimbursement grant, but the state has a pool of funds for it. So as costs increase and more districts apply and more, then our portion of that pie decreases. So we were estimated to get about a 58% reimbursement for high cost, and we actually have 41% reimbursement for high cost disability. So I do project that one to keep going down over the next couple of years. As far as expenditures, included in this cash flow is actual expenditures to date, encumbrances, and then we have hit our PO close date. So up until now, in the cash flow, I assume most budget administrators are going to use 100% of their budget through the year. So if we allocate a certain dollar amount to a program or a department or a building, that we're assuming that they're going to use 100% of their allocation. Once we hit the PO close date, we cut off POs. And so if it's not encumbered and there's no PO in there, I'm assuming it's not going to get spent between now and June 30th. So this cash flow includes that PO cutoff and assuming that now that unexpended budgets are not spent between now and the end of the year. The last thing on here, the program planning. Early literacy plan we had when the state school fund went up to a $10.3 billion state school fund in August. We had set aside funds to be able to kickstart that early literacy plan, knowing that the early literacy dollars were coming. And we've slowed down and spent the year on planning and piloting the program to make sure we do it right. So the funds that we set aside for the early literacy plan, we did not spend all of those this year out of general fund. The family resource coordinator is another one that we hit pause on, and we spent the year planning and being intentional on what that position could look like in the future, so that then we could build it into the budget. And then the math adoption has been in planning all year. Arturo will talk about it a little bit tonight, but we are not going to fully implement all of it and purchase all the materials this June. So there's some adjustments in there for that too. And then lastly, grant carryover funds. We're trying to utilize as much of our grants as we can with unexpended grants at this point in time of the year. So we're just really looking at those grants, looking at how we can utilize those funds best without negatively impacting. So, that makes sense? Questions? Now on to building the budget for next year, the 24-25 budget. We've spent the last several months going through and working with administrators, working with enrollment projections and staffing projections. And we build the budgets differently based on what we're looking at. So we use a zero-based budgeting for programs and departments. So technology department, business department, curriculum department. We really look at those budgets and build those from the ground up. zero-based. Whereas the schools, we budget the schools based on their enrollment and their demographics. So a building has 450 students projected for the next year, then they get a dollar amount per student, they get an additional allocation for ELD. So then we look at the students and demographics and allocate funds out based on that for the building, so it's equitable. Then we take both of those and look at what our contract obligations are, what our union bargain rates are, or projected union bargain rates are. Any professional development that's included in the union agreement, working conditions, benefits, health insurance, sick leave, sub time, temp time, all of those things that are associated to the staffing to the, that are in either the programs or the schools, and apply those rates. And then we look at legislative impacts or contractual impacts, our Sodexo contract, our MIGCO contract, and build in those contractual obligations. So that's kind of a baseline of how the budget is built. Things we're considering, that I wanted to highlight for this next budget year and that we're building into this budget is resources. We're going to continue to budget on the second year of the biennium. So we know what the state school fund is next year at $7.3 billion. We are budgeting for funding, so no additional enrollment projections for next year. And then we are budgeting for the removal of ESSER funds that expire September 30th. So we are considering all of those in our revenue. As far as expenditures, we have a TA for FGA. We still have to negotiate FGA or OSEA, and then confirm and consult with admin and confidential groups. So those in this budget are estimates, they're projections. We still have to bargain and finish finalizing those rates. We are building in curriculum adoptions and investments, looking at long-term impact so that we can make sure that we are continuing to make investment in our curriculum materials. The unemployment for classified groups, so that's something that passed the legislative session this last year, not just a couple of months ago, but last year. That was kind of unintended. I don't know if it was unintended impact, but it was kind of a surprise of an impact. We are self-insured for unemployment, and this new Senate Bill 489 that came into effect January 1st, now our classified staff can apply for unemployment during breaks. So summer breaks, spring break, winter break. And so we need to build in a reserve in this budget to be able to accommodate that. So that is the biggest financial impact in this budget. If all of our classified staff apply for unemployment, it could be well over 1.5 million. So, we're not building in 1.5 million into the budget. But we are going to try to put a reserve in there and hope that it's enough. So. You, go ahead.
Questions?
That was a heavy hitter. Sorry.
So you have 9-month employees being paid on a 12-month contract.
The new
So-
law doesn't care when you're getting paid, it cares about when you are working.
Wow.
And I think a lot of it was not necessarily passed with education in mind. I think they were looking at other industries where you have seasonal workers. But again, we have benefits that last 12 months and we pay them over 12 months. So it doesn't really fit very well for education, but it is the current law.
So they're still eligible.
And we already seen an influx, so after we came back from spring break, the Monday after, we've seen all of the emails starting to come in about the waiting week. So
That's interesting.
we do see a lot of staff utilizing it, just what percentage of staff, I don't know.
Do they know enough about?
I think they're yes,
Yeah.
and no, yeah.
Because you were saying maybe they will, maybe they will not, so.
And I mean, there's challenges with unemployment because once you claim unemployment, and this is a risk for us, once you claim unemployment, you have to show that you are actively seeking work. And so do employees want to do that work? And then we also have employees that work summer school, summer programs, so those times wouldn't qualify. But, you know, some people don't want to work during the summer. Some people do.
As an employer too, you have to really work hard at showing that you're trying to get your employees to come back to work. So
And
what does that look like?
do we have work for them to do during those periods of time? That's the other piece that's a little challenging.
But this just applies to classified? Why doesn't it apply to certified?
The law,
Excluded.
yeah, it's the law that, yeah, there's a law that kind of governs educators on the, I'm forgetting the acronym that goes with this, but it's basically, are you paid by hour or are you salaried? There's a special exemption for educators, being salaried, otherwise, but that law is a little different.
So would it make more sense to change our classified to salary than by hour?
It doesn't fit in the law. I can't believe I can't remember when it, well,
It's okay.
it's, I can't remember the acronym for that law, but basically it would say that to be salaried, you either have to be, have people who report to you or you do original work where someone's not telling you what the work is you are to do. And those classifications determine whether you're an hourly or whether you're a salaried worker.
I think one of the other risks that is not quantifiable is, so if employees apply for unemployment and they have to prove that they're actively seeking work, are we then going to lose more staff over the summertime?
Yeah.
So, and that I think is the big unknown for the summer.
Yeah, it's a lot of unknowns. Really, I guess we'll see how it works out.
What happens if, like for summer programming, if we can show, which we might be able to, that, let's say we, maybe are trying to tutor groups of kids and we can't fill those needed positions. Would you be able to claim unemployment if your district has open positions for classified that aren't filled?
We would have to actively ask them, here, we have a position for you, do you want it? And they would have to decline it.
And there's
It would be
qualifications to this too, it's, like, it has to be work that they can do. I forget all the specifics on it, but it's complicated on that too.
Okay.
We have many more staff that are out during the summer than positions that are available during summer school activities. So,
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
so there's a lot to unpack in this one item that I think is gonna take us a couple of years to get a routine down so that we can understand what the impact is. Because I don't think year one, we're not gonna get, you know, I believe the utilization will change over the first few years before we can see a stable number to be able to estimate.
Madam Chair, it seems to me that we didn't see, it's not like we didn't see this coming. This is, I think, probably been a discussion that they've had down at the Puzzle Palace for a number of years. And when they talk about education and about employment, and about wages. And I'm not putting this on anybody. I just want to know what our awareness level was last year or before, when there was some meandering about this. Because when we closed early that one year, and teachers today will know what I'm talking about, we had teachers that were dismissed, but we were all dismissed. And we had one teacher go down and file for unemployment, we got it. And they had to change the law so teachers couldn't en masse go down and file for unemployment. So I'm just wondering if this was, I don't want to say a knee-jerk reaction to that, but some sort of, is there any history to this, or this just pop up this year in Salem and become a unintended consequence of what they're trying to do with that other.
Yeah,
So-
I don't think the education crew, we didn't, this was really about seasonal workers. And I didn't really think this was coming through to education. I think when the law passed and it got applied, our lobbyists started having big conversations about this, but there wasn't a lot stopped there. So I don't want to say we were totally caught off foot, but I will say that a lot of people are surprised, and especially now that we're budgeting, we're all having to look at the impact of this. I don't think anybody was expecting that.
Almost like measure once, cut twice, it seems like, yeah.
Well,
Ready, fire, aim.
are you hearing from legislators saying, oh, wow, we also didn't maybe realize what this might mean for schools, and we're gonna work quickly to put in some sort of a workaround, or is there just like, no, it's up to schools? I mean,
Certainly COSA is bringing together information from lots and lots of districts to begin to talk about the impact and then to lobby on our behalf. I don't know at all like what the chance is of that. I just know this is a big impact, and we're certainly going to be talking to legislators about this.
well, won't there be a pretty, well, I mean, would you think there'd be a pretty large amount of school districts that would not be able to even cover that? If, once the word spreads, so there's,
Once the word spreads, I definitely think it's challenging because we don't know what the impact is gonna be yet, really. I mean, it depends on how many people apply and how many weeks they apply for. So I mean, I've heard some districts are not even gonna budget for it, and they're just gonna eat it as it comes. I've heard some districts are gonna budget a certain percentage. We're looking at budgeting 40% utilization for next year. So it was kind of a surprise, because we went through the whole legislative session last year, didn't talk much about it, and then it was the fall, and it's like, oh no, this is coming up in January, where it really started catching our eye. In the short session that just finalized, there was no amendments or changes to it.
that's what I thought, you didn't hear anything
No.
also in the summer. And then what about, some sort of incentive for the district to encourage staff to not apply? It sounds like it might be a hassle for them as well. Is there a financial incentive the district could offer to offset and keep them from applying that maybe
You
might
might
be?
even provide them full, work equivalent, or,
And we don't currently have that work budgeted.
Yeah, okay,
So no matter what, we're adding to the,
right.
yes. And then somebody's got to do it and track it down. I mean, there's a whole organization here that goes to that whole piece. It's, again, complicated.
the other thing that we've looked at is not being self-insured. So right now, we are self-insured. If an employee leaves, files unemployment, we pay for that. We could convert and just do a tax rate through unemployment department, pay them, they manage it all. But it's a tax rate to us, and when we first looked at it, the rate that would be applied to us would be on all salaries. So the rate would be applied to licensed, administrative, classified, everybody. And the cost would be more than what we're projecting for us being self-insured, so.
So if you get paid at 12-month contract, you do not apply for the unemployment, right?
No, you have to
Only
be out
10
of work,
months.
out of work for 5 or more days, you can start applying.
Okay,
So our 12-month employees wouldn't qualify, but our 10
or 10 months. would that
10-month,
qualify?
9-month employees would. So it is definitely something that we have on our radar and we're looking at, and it is a risk either way. So. The next one is our PERS rate increases. We hear about this every year. PERS rates are projected to increase again in the next biennium. And then the following biennium, our PERS UAL, our rate credit, will expire. So we will see a increase in the 25-27 biennium, and then the 27 biennium, we will see a significant increase because our UAL rate credit drops off. So just things that we have in the back of our mind, trying to think about and make sure we're planning for in advance.
Well, and for,
Unfunded actuarial liability.
sorry, I
It's,
You're all night.
Better one.
I know. I, that's.
short session, legislative short session. There wasn't a lot that impacted schools during the short session. Two of them were just technical fixes. We wish unemployment would have been on there. But the first one is really exciting for us, the Summer Learning House Bill 4082, $30 million to the state. We get 1.3 million for summer programs. So that is a big one that is impacting us, and we will start to get to utilize it this summer. Abbreviated school day, Senate Bill 1558. It was just a clarification on Senate Bill 819 that passed last year on high school or early release time for students on an IEP or a 504 plan. And then the last one is the teacher sub pay. So in the last legislative session, there was new language for half-day subs that was 4 hours and above gets a full day of pay. A lot of our half-day subs are 4 hours, and so that created us to have to pay a full 8-hour day for our 4-hour employees. And so the technical fix starting, I think, I can't remember if it's immediately or July 1st, but anyhow, that brings that 4 hours back in alignment. 4 for 4.
So we won't have any more 4-hour employees, we'll just have 8.
No, we were for substitutes.
I would have been taking all those half
Sorry,
days,
I'm
but all
It's
got those
actually
half
3
days.
hours and 45 minutes.
gonna sign me up for the half days.
Yeah, the full day pay.
Yeah.
Love it.
And then claim unemployment.
The next slide I have here is the demographic study information. This is one question that came up in the last budget meeting that we had. Is why are we seeing, where are we budgeting floor funding? What do we see our enrollment going over time? This is kind of a crazy graph. At the board meeting tonight, I'll have a full presentation on the demographic study, so you'll get to hear lots about it. This is kind of that final slide in that presentation on what we expect to see. It overlays our prior 2 demographic studies and our current study. And so you can see back in 2018-19, we had a demographic study, and then they gave us a high, medium, and low projection. And then in 2021-22, we had another one where they gave us a high, medium, and low projection. And that was post-pandemic. And then we just had a new one completed where we now have a high, medium, and low projection. And that is really close to actually the last demographic study we had. It shifts it a little bit. But the middle projection for both are pretty well in alignment. But what you can see in here is we do have a dip in enrollment. We have high senior, high school class sizes that are exiting over the next few years. And our incoming kinders aren't large enough, right? So we do have a little bit of a dip. We're sitting about 5,700. We're going to go down to 5,600 students. It's not a significant dip in enrollment over the next few years, but it will take us the 10 years to recover from.
We've been asked questions about all of the building, and the buildings actually, the migration is the only thing really kind of keeping it flat, because we're losing in the senior kindergarten, where we have a net minus of 80 kids. But it is the migration of first grade through 11th grade, of kids coming in, is even helping us to not be speeding down further.
And when we do staffing projections, when we do building capacity projections, we always look at that middle range, because that's going to be the average of what could happen. We could see a drop if the net migration drops along with the birth rates, or if we have a significant influx in migration in, lots of housing coming in, then you could see it pop back up. But even in the high range here, you can see like the high range for the current one doesn't hardly hit where we were pre-pandemic. So we're still at a net loss district-wide before pandemic. Outlook. We've spent the last few months putting together the budget, having lots of conversations, understanding everything that we've kind of just talked about, where we are with our cash flow, what we have coming up in the upcoming year. With that being said, building all of our budgets, department, district level budgets ground up, it is about $1.5 million worth of reductions that we are looking at doing. And it reduces our fund balance. So it brings our current fund balance from 19% back down to around 10%, which is where we budgeted last year. And then it looks at a 2-year positive. So if we were to bring our budget down, deficit spending so far down to an 8%, then year 2, we would be cutting. So it helps if we look at a 2-year forecast, it helps us kind of make the waves into ripples and start planning over 2 years. So we're not looking at projecting a 8% fund balance like board policy. We're looking at projecting a 10% to be able to use the one-time funds of our fund balance, because fund balance is one-time funds. It's not reoccurring every year over a period of time. So you're not just using it and then making cuts to sustain. So just that, so you guys kind of know what we're looking at. What we'll be bringing next budget meeting. So that being said, tonight the whole goal of tonight for you guys is to talk about our budget priorities. What are your guys' priorities? Get your guys' feedback. The budget priorities really drive the conversation around investments and reductions and balancing our budget, and understanding where those priorities are, help give us that framework and that guide. We'll use all of our community engagement efforts through the strategic plan, through integrated guidance that we've done, administrative feedback. And then we look at your guiding principles, not only from what we talked about tonight, but the guiding principles from the years prior. So these are all things that we look at when we're looking at building this budget.
So one of the things that we use is the strategic plan, and we put on your page is kind of one sheeter that is page 7 in the strategic plan, but it kind of summarizes the 4 goals that we have. And I just wanted to kind of remind folks of what they are. First goal is really around improving instruction. The second goal is around behavioral health and wellness. It's been a big push for us even before the pandemic started. The third one is around family and student engagement. It's a goal. I mean, we made a lot more progress on goal 1 and 2 this year than we have on goal 3, but that's still a very important piece for us as we're moving forward. I also just, with the new superintendent, we've got to do integrated guidance again next fall, so they need to go out and get community engagement. It'll be a great time to not only get the new superintendent out to meet the community, but also to get some feedback around some of the values that our community. So, and then last is the 4th goal is around creating a resilient organization. Really, it's around how are we doing all of our departments, the finance, the HR, how are they running? Are they efficient? Do they produce, are they producing good outcomes for students? So those are kind of the 4 basic strategic plan goals that we have. You've got copies of them here just for your information. Our last time that we met with the budget committee, these were the kind of historical budget committee priorities. The first one was maintaining lower class sizes. That was one of the highest priorities. The second one was focus on all students graduating, raising our grad rate. The next was providing supports to our underserved populations, focus on mental and behavioral health. And then the last one there was we were coming out of the pandemic, so we had kind of a priority of accelerate student learning to offset the COVID-19 learning loss. And then I think the financial stability is kind of the one that's always sitting there for us, is trying to make sure that we're not doing the boom and bust cycle where one year we're pushing in money and the next year we're having to back off. So that was our previous years. This was the actual last year when we did this. Here was the feedback that we took from budget committee members. So it was basically improving instruction, lower K-4 class sizes is critical. Behavioral mental health continues to be just as critically important. Striving to increase instructional time, and then connecting CTE programs with local businesses. So that was some of the feedback that we pulled out of our last budget meeting. Spring of 2022, the year before, these were deferred maintenance and IT infrastructure were one of the priorities. Elementary class size and then improving instruction were still the focuses. So you have a little idea about what previous budget committees were prioritizing. This year, this is kind of the way we see it. I mean, you're going to get an opportunity to provide us some feedback here in just a second or two. Improving instruction for us goes right up. This is really the fundamental thing that we need to be focused on right now. How do we improve instruction? We crossed out the one at the bottom because, I mean, that's still a concern for us, but really we believe moving instruction up to number one is really the way in which we're going to go about improving those outcomes for our kids who were suffering during COVID. Maintain our lower class sizes. Currently, we're staffing at 23.5. We're actually at 21.3 in our K-4 classes, which is a good class size. Middle school is actually in their core courses is running somewhere around 27, 28, which is again a lower number than we've seen in a long time. High school is running kind of 27 to 30 in their core sizes. It's again, I think we're in a good spot class size wise. And then focusing on providing supports to our underserved populations, always our goal. Focus on behavioral mental health, financial stability. So this is kind of where we see this headed. And so now is kind of a little bit of work time for folks, for you to talk about some of the things that are going through your heads about what's important. We're still putting together the budget. So these priorities that you give us tonight will help guide us as we get ready to present on May 8th, some of the things that are our recommendations for the budget. So what we're going to do is, I think if we just go pairs, and then I think try with Nate over there. And is there something missing from our priority set? Is there something that we need to make sure that we add in there? And we'll put it back so you can see kind of what we're recommending. What should the district consider highlighting, prioritize, emphasis through the budget process? And then are there any other recommendations or even just feedback or anything that we need to think about as we're kind of putting the final touches on this budget? And I think we're gonna have you report out so we can copy it down, but if you take notes, maybe it would also be nice for us just to get your notes too, just so we make sure that we do a good job. Anything else to?
Hey, can Mark, is on the Zoom, could he chat something to Enrique or chat something to us? Mark, if you had anything about these questions?
Yeah, thanks. I can just do that if I see how to do that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect. So we're gonna take about 10 minutes here, maybe, and then we'll do probably about 5-10 minutes of report out, and we'll go from there. And if you have questions, we'll walk around and answer everything we can.
I know, yes. Tuesday.
Okay. Is there anything that pops to your brain about what is missing?
No, they saw it. I just wondering what thought it.
I do have a dress code.
Just then. This tip of the.
I mean, they lined it out. Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna bring how they're cutting down on that.
Exactly.
Where
One of the things I.
Yeah. And then the other thing, I'm not back in there, but I think.
They're not gonna do.
I would say under-
No. But I think it's a fair question, and I think that they touch different things, but.
Because there are, kids like my friend over here. Lost for years.
Yeah. They're under another district.
They're not even interested.
Said it.
And then the other thing.
Well, hopefully it's keeping the ending of the we're gonna hire, that will be a part of some of that. It'll be in a couple of years, but hopefully
Exactly.
But with instruction, I think the people hearing.
Got him live.
Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, I'm just looking for like kind of well-being ones.
Well, we're gonna end up.
Service or something like that.
But I'm curious too about how they're going to.
I don't know if this is construction or if it is. Housing department, and this is what we talked about.
Well, change is fine. No, it's not what I'm going to program. No, I agree, but it's more cost.
So those are my 2 cents were just inflation.
Well, what did the district highlight and prioritize?
I think it's very interesting.
This is just the, I would say the class size.
Yeah.
It's like, with that and 3 hours.
They have my number.
Yeah.
It's
very.
But they generally.
And that's what we usually.
I asked them if we were able to.
Yeah, but they.
It's very interesting.
They will.
Yeah, all this is also.
But you see anything else?
Add on to it.
I put streamline. Like the entire-
This seems pretty like.
Permanent.
I think I can throw one out there.
Yeah, they have, they just differently, don't you think? They want to have like.
Yeah.
That's what I.
Cheap, but you know.
Think about it.
It doesn't make sense.
That's some of
Something with that. And then she goes out, she to get it. That's still, not, nothing in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm asking myself, is like, what is the.
I don't know much, but that's then, that was already in there when we started. When we started on the board.
That makes it easier. That makes it better. Last year, they gave us the curriculum that they said it was too expensive. Let's just put it out this year. And they would have, and this year. And this was a pilot program they started being, she came to that school. And then.
Got 25.
And any additional recommendations?
You didn't do it, but.
I just posted those in my box. And
I don't see any of this recommendation. I see all of these.
We talked about.
Really.
State
Oh, the teacher comes around?
No.
Oh,
That's okay.
I mean, that's a goal.
Go ahead.
It's already.
Well,
After 2 years of education, I'm also so you should have city hall, and that should be much better. Yes. Are we taking this prematurely?
I would say.
And even when I was-
Democracy, I think it's well, I think it needs to be where like across the board, for everybody.
I thought, in my mind, this is
You know, where that was.
It's
Man, it's nice.
still outstanding.
Accelerate. It is too. Because it doesn't have to be so much about COVID. They need to be better than they do.
Just to catch up. Exactly.
Yeah.
Relax.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with that, but it's. Well, after that. I would like to.
And kids in high school. Yeah. Really bad schools.
My last week was like,
They did good.
Right. Where will the grandkids?
It's not like the land use like nice, good.
Speed here.
And they came 35 hours. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So if we can come on back, and maybe we can just start with, just having each group kind of give us kind of a sense of the conversation. I don't know who would like to start. Being elected Brad, so.
Bradley would like to do it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, it's smart putting them together.
Yeah. So we had a short discussion and we thought safety and security should be a part of it. And felt like it was part of the mental behavioral health too, that Mr. Truax brought up. Nate felt pretty good about everything that was on the page, so he didn't have any additions. Right? So, and then the other one that we came up with was, we felt like that kids are still recovering from COVID, that learning piece. We under improving instruction, thought that maybe we should have a subcategory under instruction, improving instruction, that we're still working to get to where we were baseline wise with learning. So,
Because putting a line through it sort of sends a message that, yeah, we've been there, we've done that, let's move on. And I don't think we want to do that.
Not yet.
hey, I was here.
I'm sorry.
Mike,
He
you're not
did-
mayor anymore.
He couldn't handle it. He said he was gonna do the task, but he didn't really. To tag on to what Brad was saying,
Yeah.
for that, about the accelerating student learning to offset the COVID. I understand why you're saying, you were just saying, everybody, we need that for improving instruction, but we thought maybe say, improving instruction and accelerate student learning. Take that first part of that COVID-19 and add it to your improving instruction. We like prioritizing lower class size. We like to see the instruction streamlined across the district. A little bit better. And,
What
one
was that
question,
last part?
streamlining the instruction across the district.
District.
Align practices.
Yes.
So again, we don't have islands of excellence. We have excellent, instruction.
Across the bank, yeah.
Across.
And, one question that we're wondering where you're cutting the 1.5 million from.
We will talk about that. We haven't finalized that discussion yet.
Okay,
So we'll hear about that more next time. Okay, we're
we got it.
so excited to hear about that.
Yeah.
Our goal is to minimize the impact of built level.
We were just wondering.
And I think, I mean, just to I think we're gonna be able to do that. I don't think you're gonna see big cuts to like class, we're not doing those pieces. So, I mean, I think we're gonna be, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're wondering. It's like, we're gonna cut it 1.5 million, but we're also saying we want to keep lower class sizes, so where will that money come from? Kind of what we're-
Are we better than any other districts that we hear cutting here and cutting there? Where are we?
We are not.
We're with,
We're way better.
Not in Salem is cutting 15% of its licensed staff.
Portland.
That is not where we're at.
Okay.
Certainly, the addition of the early literacy, pushing in reading specialists in the buildings. There's some ads in this budget, but for the most part, we're just trimming. I mean, there are things that we wanted, but something's got to go. So I mean, I think we're doing it mostly programmatically.
okay.
So we're not in that same place at Portland Public and Salem City right now.
Just be redundant. Okay, go.
We kind of hit on all four. For instruction, we focused on reading, and talked about the additional idea of this program that Tigers been talking about, that they've been piloting, this Ignite, which is $50,000 for 60 kids to move them in reading, and they and another district have seen this extreme growth on top of the other ideas that they're gonna do with the early literacy money. Just exploring if we know a program is showing success like that for kids, could that be built in, maybe not as a one and done, but maybe not forever. I think what I've been hearing from counselors, especially at the high school, is the level of work that has to happen around 504 support. We've heard that from parents. And they've kind of itemized out the time that they spend with the 504 work and how that changes the time they can spend on the other pieces that we're prioritizing around behavioral health and wellness. And I asked if there's other districts. There is a district that has been trying something with staffing to alleviate some of that pressure on counseling staff to allow them to work more broadly. And, what could that look like, whether it's a staff, whether it's a system change. And around teacher retention and resilient organization, I didn't mention this, but aligning PD, and I have brought this up to Dave and Arturo, the idea of looking at the travel budget and pulling teachers for conferences and things that we've been doing, and the amount of money we spend on that at this point. What I think I've been hearing, or at least I feel like is worth exploring, is what if we weren't traveling and pulling teachers from classrooms, we're also wanting teachers to be with their kids and focusing on the alignment. Teachers are saying we want that time to collaborate, and could that funding be shifted to support extended contract time? What does that look like? And then was that. So that was my main part, and then we had kind of a magical discussion about something we both were thinking about, but
It would be adding a position, which I know when you're doing $1.5 million in cuts, it's not terribly reasonable. However, a volunteer coordinator position of some kind, where we could work on coordinating older people with extra time, as well as parents, to get into the classrooms and help with the early literacy. I was involved heavily with Read Naturally at Gale Street School, and I feel like I really helped get those kids over the hump. And with just a few hours of one-on-one reading, I think it makes a huge difference in lives. Plus, it feeds into our goal 3 with the family and student engagement.
Does that kind of fit under our family resource coordinator that we're hopefully gonna be hiring?
Yes, we have budgeted in SIA, but those will be one of those priority things that we're gonna have to talk about, like where's our priority at? Because there are some things that we can add it, but then we're gonna cut something else. We'll bring back to you, like the travel budget. I have the info now, so we'll bring you some more information about that. But this would be another, the volunteer coordinator, we've talked about this for a while. It just hasn't materialized yet. I think everyone can see, just like you described, some of the advantages of it, how to use this. So definitely something for us to talk about.
And the last piece was was again around the SRO, and I know Dave, you're coming back to us with feedback again from admin, and I feel like that falls under goal one with instruction, because what we heard initially from admin that came to the board was how much it's helped them, allow them more time, because Vaughn is working with things that they would normally be spending so much time doing. And we're trying to get principals time to get into the classrooms to help with instruction. So I know the city's committed to funding or sharing support for a second SRO, and it feels like there's support for that. But if that, the idea that it's not SRO just for the sake of SRO, but also looking at giving admin a break on some of those duties so they can do more of what they want to be doing. We didn't have an agreement, we were just kind of talking about, but that.
What I would say is I don't disagree with the second SRO is a choice. And we presented plenty of evidence of there's some, but it actually wouldn't help administrators get into the classrooms. That wouldn't actually free them up that much. But that isn't to say that there isn't still a lot of work for that SRO. I just wanted to clarify that providing support for the principal would be a different kind of function, really. Yeah.
It would provide Vaughn with a lot of support
Right.
and maybe make it so that we could start doing some of those educational things that we wanted the SRO to do when we initially redid the contract.
Yeah. Any other follow-up? There's lots of good ideas here. I can tell you that almost all of them we've had conversations about. They're not foreign to us, that's for sure. What's that? Oh, Mark.
Yeah, I would just say, I know we have to cut the 1.5 million. I just hope that we're looking, my comments have more to do with just, I don't disagree with the sort of the 5 things that we have listed here. Financial stability is really, I think, towards the top, especially for the next 4 years, but really critical. But I just hope that we're looking closely at where we're cutting and what we're cutting out of the 1.5. But even more than that, just looking at whether the benefit we're getting for the money we're spending in whatever area it is. And whether that's really something that we need to continue to do. So mine is much more on a sort of a broader scale and just really evaluating, because who knows what's going to happen in the next 4 years with the money. And so it's not a bad practice to start really evaluating everything and the value we get from the money that we spend. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Mark.
Madam Chair, if I could add one other thing, I would like to thank Nate for making sure, holding our attention and our feet to the fire on Senate Bill 489. I think there has to be a way to talk to the lobbyists for the School Board Association, for COSA, for OEA, make sure that and for the employees that are hardest hit by any changes we would do to the class on OSEA, we need to make sure that we can have an honest conversation about, I don't want to say the damage that did, but again, it was, we've always talked about unintended consequences. And raising that point is something we need to do. I was particularly proud, and I know I was promised myself I wouldn't say anything about when I was mayor, but when I was mayor, I took great pride in the fact that the Forest Grove, there were people saying, well, how do they do it in Forest Grove? That we had established some sort of cachet around the state. And I think Forest Grove School District can do the same kind of thing. If we are inventive, if we take this seriously, if we don't just worry about what's in it for me, but rather what's in it for us, then we can probably approach that problem with a little bit more realism. And yeah, it's not easy, but I think it's also something that you have to have a conversation. You're not going to solve it this year, may not solve it next year. But again, it will put people in that mind, and will give us something to say, other than we gotta do something about our property tax system in the state. And end up doing nothing at all about that, so, that's an editorial comment, I apologize. But I'm just trying to,
No, you don't.
I think Nate raises a good point. And one other thing, as long as I'm here, Nate's name is on the people that were attending the last meeting, so we've already approved those minutes, so I can't change it, but you can sneak it in and I won't bitch about it. I mean, I won't complain.
I think that's on YouTube.
Yeah.
We got that forever.
So we'll get working on that, and what I will do is I'll make a couple of phone calls and find out what the strategy is around lobbying, just to bring it back for info about how the, state, OSBA and COSA are looking at how they want to, again, lobby on that.
Thank you.
Yep. And with that, I think
Are we good?
we're ready.
Okay, we are gonna adjourn at 6:31. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, you've been there.
Just turned right about 6.